Tennessee Republican Congressman Mark Green. He is the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee and served as a flight surgeon with the U.S. Army in the Middle East. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on what is just a devastating day, I think, for this entire country.
Thanks for having me on. Prayers to the family.
Absolutely. You served as a flight surgeon. You have been on helicopters. You've investigated flight crashes before. At this point, and I know this is very preliminary, I know we're just starting to get information, but what is your sense of what may have gone wrong here?
It's very difficult for me to imagine that at the same elevation, the Black Hawk, didn't see that aircraft. The only thing that comes to mind for me is possibly target fixation. It's a term we use in the military on the aircraft that was taking off. It was an aircraft taking off, and it's very possible the Black Hawk pilots focused on that, saw that they were well behind that aircraft, and sort of kept their eyes on that aircraft and didn't see the second one that was coming in on approach. And that's how I'm reasoning this is possible. Even with night vision goggles in a city, it's very, it would be almost impossible not to see the taillights. They would light up with NVG. So I think they got target fixation. I also am a little concerned about the ATC and, of course, the way that the pace of how the warnings got to the pilots. There's still a lot of research to do on that. The UHF frequency that the military aircraft flies on, it's a different frequency than what commercial pilots fly on, and were the ATC talking on the right networks, those kinds of things are going to have to be ferreted out.
Yeah, the other thing that has gotten so much attention, and I was, of course, just talking about this with Greg Feith, is the fact that Reagan National Airport is very congested. You have talked about the need for deconfliction. Do you think changes need to be made in terms of how many helicopters are allowed to, how many of these training flights, quite frankly, are allowed to take place at night and at the times that commercial aircraft are flying?
I think the training flights are very important because, remember, or think through this, the Black Hawks down there at Fort Belvoir may very well have to respond to some crisis in the capital. So having them capable of flying those routes, very important, having them trained on that. We haven't had a problem with this before, and we've been doing this for years. This is there are probably more radars in this area, and it's really inconceivable to see that this could happen. So I will tell you that when you have an investigation like this, and all the ones I've ever done, it was always multiple problems that lined up all at the same time to cause the accident. So that's why the NTSB is so good at what they do. They'll come out with what all lined up and caused this to happen, and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again.
I do have to ask you about what we heard from President Trump today. He seemed to suggest that this could be the result of diversity and equity programs, that basically he wants to strip that. Do you think, first of all, that may have played a role? What do you make of what President Trump said today in that regard?
I look to at not only what President Trump said, but, the Washington Post, the New York Times. There have been lots of articles, other news organizations, about thousands of qualified people who have applied and who were not chosen. More qualified people. There are studies and analysis at the FAA showing that they intentionally picked through this biographical mechanism of hiring people who were less qualified. And I just ask the American people, who do you want at the ATC controls? Do you want the best person? I ask this often about the military. Who do you want your daughter to go to war with? The battalion commander, who is the most lethal, best leader, or fit a DEI category?
Yeah.
Merit has to matter, especially in some jobs, brain surgery, pilots, ATCs, things like that. You can't just pick. You should pick the very best person. And it's clear that the FAA did not do that.
And yet, Congressman, that is one argument. Even President Trump acknowledged today, no, he can't actually draw a direct link. He's not certain of anything.
No, not in
Are
this
you?
category.
Yeah. Are you
Absolutely.
concerned he's getting ahead of the investigation? Do you think that's a problem?
I think coming out with this issue is really important. This was a part of something he campaigned on. President Trump said merit needs to matter, and it does need to matter, especially in these situations. So having the dialogue is completely okay, and it's one he had before this accident happened. So, but saying that that's absolutely the cause here, well, the investigation will have to determine that. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's multiple things that probably contributed here, and the NTSB will get to the bottom of it.
And just to,
but merit should matter.
And again, I guess my question is that a discussion for a different day when there's absolutely nothing, by the president's own admission, linking this horrific tragedy to DEI programs? People are looking to the president for facts, for hard information. Do you worry that this in any way complicates the job that investigators are trying to do, which is quite frankly to stay focused on the facts of the matter and exactly what happened?
I don't think those NTSB examiners are going to change their methodology because President Trump is concerned about how DEI is, weakening our military, weakening, all these organizations throughout the government. I don't think it's just like, physicians, they're not going to just suddenly choose to not do their job today because of this issue being brought to the fore. And if this makes the point more clear, President Trump should say it again today 5 times.
All right. But again, there is no link has been established by the president's own admission.
Agreed.
Yeah. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on a really difficult day. We really